What if everything you thought you knew about history was just a little bit wrong? Picture this. You're sitting in class, learning about the past, and suddenly you realize that some of the most famous stories you've been told might not be true at all. That's right, history is full of myths, misconceptions, and flat-out fabrications that have been passed down for generations. But today, we're here to set the record straight. Welcome to a journey through 20 of the most widely believed historical misconceptions, where we'll uncover the truth behind the tales. From Napoleon's height to the myth of the Trojan horse, we're diving into the mysteries, debunking the myths, and revealing the fascinating realities that have been hiding in plain sight. So, if you're ready to question what you've been taught and explore the hidden truths of history, stick around because this is going to be one wild ride. Let's get started. Now, turning to our first historical misconception, let's tackle one of the most enduring myths about one of history's most famous figures, Napoleon Bonaparte. For centuries, people have believed that Napoleon was unusually short, often imagining him as a tiny man with a big temper. But here's the truth: Napoleon wasn't actually short for his time. In fact, he stood at 5 feet 7 inches, which was completely average for a Frenchman in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. So, where did this myth come from? The confusion stems from a mix-up between French and British measurement systems. Back then, the French used a different unit of measurement called the French inch, which was slightly longer than the British inch. When British propagandists reported Napoleon's height, they either misunderstood or deliberately misrepresented it, making him seem shorter than he actually was. Over time, this misconception stuck, and Napoleon became the poster child for the so-called Napoleon complex, a term used to describe someone who compensates for their perceived lack of height with aggressive behavior. But the reality is, Napoleon's height was nothing out of the ordinary. Historical portraits and records confirm that he was of average stature, and the myth of his shortness is more a product of cultural storytelling than historical fact. So, the next time you hear someone joke about Napoleon being short, you'll know the truth: he was just as tall as the average person of his time. Moving forward, let's explore another fascinating myth that has shaped our understanding of history. Now, turning to our next historical misconception, let's dive into the enduring image of Vikings wearing horned helmets. This iconic look has been etched into our minds through movies, TV shows, and even sports mascots. But here's the surprising truth: Vikings never actually wore horned helmets. The idea of Vikings sporting these dramatic headpieces can be traced back to the 19th century, when romanticized art and operas like Richard Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen popularized the image. These artistic interpretations were more about creating a dramatic spectacle than historical accuracy. In reality, horned helmets would have been highly impractical in battle. Imagine trying to fight with giant horns sticking out of your head. It would make you an easy target and could even get you tangled in weapons or obstacles. Archaeological evidence supports this, as no authentic Viking helmet with horns has ever been found. Instead, Viking helmets were simple, functional, and designed for protection, often made of iron or leather with a nose guard. Some of the most famous finds, like the German helmet discovered in Norway, show just how practical and unadorned these helmets were. So, why does the myth persist? It's largely due to the power of storytelling and the allure of a striking visual. The horned helmet has become a symbol of Viking identity, even though it's completely fictional. As we move forward, we'll uncover more myths that have shaped our understanding of history, but for now, remember, when you picture a Viking, leave the horns out of it. Now, turning to our next historical misconception, let's explore the infamous phrase often attributed to Marie Antoinette, "Let them eat cake." This quote has become a symbol of aristocratic indifference, but here's the twist: Marie Antoinette probably never said it. The origins of this phrase can be traced back to a story in Jean-Jacques Rousseau's Confessions. written in the 1760s, where he mentions a similar remark made by a great princess. However, this was written when Marie Antoinette was just a child, making it impossible for her to have been the source. The phrase was later attributed to her during the French Revolution, likely as a way to vilify her and the monarchy. At the time, France was facing severe economic hardship, and the royal family became a target for public anger. Marie Antoinette, in particular, was portrayed as out of touch with the struggles of the common people, and this quote became a powerful piece of propaganda. In reality, Marie Antoinette was known for her charitable efforts, though her lavish lifestyle and the political climate made her an easy scapegoat. Historical documents and paintings from the era show her as a complex figure, caught between her personal life and the turbulent politics of her time. So, while the phrase, "let them eat cake," has endured as a symbol of royal excess, it's important to separate the myth from the historical truth. As we continue, we'll uncover more misconceptions that have shaped our understanding of history. But for now, remember, Marie Antoinette's legacy is far more nuanced than this infamous quote suggests. Now turning to our next historical misconception, let's tackle the widely held belief that Christopher Columbus proved the Earth was round. This myth has been repeated for generations, but the truth is far more interesting. By the time Columbus set sail in 1492, educated Europeans had known for centuries that the Earth was round. In fact, ancient Greek scholars like Eratosthenes had calculated the Earth's circumference as early as the 3rd century BCE, and this knowledge was preserved and expanded upon by medieval scholars. Columbus's voyage wasn't about proving the Earth's shape, it was about finding a faster trade route to Asia. At the time, European merchants were eager to bypass the costly and dangerous overland routes controlled by the Ottoman Empire. Columbus believed he could reach Asia by sailing west, but he drastically underestimated the Earth's size, leading to his famous miscalculation. His journey, while groundbreaking, was not the scientific triumph it's often portrayed to be. Instead, it was a bold gamble driven by economic ambition and a desire for exploration. The myth that Columbus proved the Earth was round likely gained traction in the 19th century, when his story was romanticized in American textbooks and popular culture. So, while Columbus's voyage did change the course of history, it wasn't the groundbreaking scientific achievement many believe it to be. As we move forward, we'll continue to uncover more misconceptions that have shaped our understanding of the past. But for now, remember, Columbus's legacy is far more complex than the myth suggests. Now turning to our next historical misconception, let's explore the widely believed idea that the Great Wall of China is visible from space. This myth has been repeated so often that it's become a staple of trivia and popular culture. But the truth is, the Great Wall is not visible from space with the naked eye. The origins of this myth can be traced back to the early 20th century, when exaggerated claims about human-made structures being visible from great distances began to circulate. However, the reality is far less dramatic. The Great Wall, while an impressive feat of engineering, is only about 30 feet wide in most sections. From space, it blends into the natural landscape, making it nearly impossible to distinguish from the surrounding terrain. Astronauts who have traveled to space, including those aboard the International Space Station, have confirmed that the wall is not visible without the aid of magnification. The myth likely gained traction because of the wall's immense length, stretching over 13,000 miles, and its cultural significance as a symbol of human achievement. But the limitations of human vision from space, combined with the wall's narrow width and earth-toned materials, make it virtually invisible from such a distance. Satellite images, while capable of capturing the wall with advanced technology, do not support the idea that it can be seen unaided. So, while the Great Wall of China remains one of the most remarkable structures ever built, its visibility from space is nothing more than a persistent myth. As we continue to unravel these historical misconceptions, it's fascinating to see how stories can take on a life of their own, often overshadowing the truth. Next, we'll dive into another misconception that has shaped our understanding of history in surprising ways. Now turning to our next historical misconception, let's address the widely held belief that the Salem witch trials involved burning at the stake. This image of witches being burned is deeply ingrained in popular culture, thanks to countless movies, books, and Halloween decorations. However, the truth is far less fiery. In Salem, Massachusetts, during the infamous witch trials of the late 17th century, those accused of witchcraft were not burned. Instead, they were hanged. Out of the 20 people executed during the trials, 19 were hanged, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death with heavy stones, a brutal but distinct method of execution. So, where did the idea of burning witches come from? This misconception likely stems from European witch trials, particularly those in countries like Germany and Scotland, where burning at the stake was a common punishment for witchcraft. In Europe, the practice of burning witches was tied to religious and legal traditions that viewed witchcraft as a heresy against the church, punishable by fire. However, in colonial America, the legal system was different. The Puritans in Salem followed English common law, which did not prescribe burning as a punishment for witchcraft. Instead, hanging was the standard method of execution for those convicted of capital crimes. The confusion between the Salem trials and European practices has been perpetuated over time, blending the two into a single dramatic narrative. Historical records from Salem, including court documents and eyewitness accounts, clearly show that no one was burned during the trials. Reenactments and historical analyses further highlight the differences between the Salem trials and their European counterparts. So, while the image of burning witches may be more dramatic, the reality of the Salem witch trials is a sobering reminder of how fear and superstition can lead to tragic outcomes. As we continue to explore these historical misconceptions, it's important to separate fact from fiction and understand how myths can shape our perception of the past. Next, we'll uncover another surprising truth that challenges what we think we know about history. Now turning to another fascinating historical misconception, let's explore the widely held belief that Cleopatra was Egyptian. While Cleopatra is often portrayed as the quintessential Egyptian queen, the truth is that she was actually of Greek descent. Cleopatra was a member of the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family that ruled Egypt after the death of Alexander the Great. The Ptolemies came to power in the late 4th century BCE and maintained their Greek identity even as they ruled over Egypt. Cleopatra herself was the first in her family to learn the Egyptian language, which speaks to her efforts to connect with her subjects. However, her Greek heritage is evident in ancient coins and statues, which depict her with distinctly Greek features, such as a prominent nose and wavy hair. Despite her Greek origins, Cleopatra's legacy has been deeply intertwined with Egyptian culture, partly due to her role as a powerful and charismatic ruler who embraced Egyptian traditions and religion. She presented herself as the reincarnation of the goddess Isis, further solidifying her connection to Egypt in the eyes of her people. Over time, however, her Greek heritage has been overshadowed by the romanticized image of her as an exotic Egyptian queen, perpetuated by literature, art, and Hollywood films. This misrepresentation has shaped how we remember Cleopatra, often ignoring the complexities of her identity and the political savvy that defined her reign. By examining ancient artifacts and historical records, we can better understand Cleopatra as a figure who bridged two worlds, Greek and Egyptian, and whose legacy continues to captivate us today. As we move forward, we'll uncover another historical misconception that challenges what we think we know about the past. Now turning to another widely misunderstood period in history, let's tackle the misconception that the Dark Ages were a time of intellectual stagnation. This idea, often perpetuated by Renaissance thinkers, paints the Middle Ages as a bleak and backward era, devoid of progress or innovation, but the truth is far more nuanced. While it's true that Europe faced significant challenges during this time, including political instability and the decline of centralized Roman authority, the Middle Ages were far from a cultural wasteland. In fact, this period saw remarkable advancements in art, architecture, and science that laid the groundwork for the Renaissance. Take, for example, the stunning Gothic cathedrals that still stand today, like Notre Dame in Paris or Chartres Cathedral. These architectural marvels were not only feats of engineering but also centers of learning and community life. The intricate stained glass windows and soaring vaulted ceilings were expressions of both spiritual devotion and technical ingenuity. Similarly, medieval manuscripts reveal a vibrant intellectual culture. Monks and scholars meticulously copied and preserved ancient texts, ensuring that the knowledge of antiquity was not lost. They also made their own contributions, particularly in fields like philosophy, theology, and natural science. Figures like Thomas Aquinas and Hildegard of Bingen exemplify the intellectual vitality of the time. Even in the realm of science, medieval thinkers made strides in areas like astronomy, medicine, and agriculture. The term Dark Ages itself is a misnomer, coined by later historians who sought to contrast their own era with what they perceived as a less enlightened past. In reality, the Middle Ages were a time of transformation and innovation, bridging the ancient and modern worlds. By re-examining this period, we can appreciate the complexity and richness of medieval life, challenging the oversimplified narrative of darkness and decline. As we continue, we'll explore another historical misconception that reshapes our understanding of the past. Now turning to another fascinating myth, let's explore the misconception that the Iron Maiden was a medieval torture device. This gruesome contraption, often depicted as a human-sized cabinet lined with spikes, has become a symbol of medieval cruelty in popular imagination. However, the truth is that the Iron Maiden likely never existed during the Middle Ages. Historians believe it was a 19th century invention, created to sensationalize the past and attract visitors to museums. The first known reference to the Iron Maiden appeared in the early 1800s, and its design seems to have been inspired by earlier myths and exaggerated accounts of medieval torture. Over time, this fabricated device became a staple of Gothic literature and horror stories, further cementing its place in the public's mind as a relic of medieval barbarity. Museums, eager to draw crowds, often displayed replicas of the Iron Maiden, presenting them as authentic artifacts. This combination of sensationalism and misinformation helped the myth spread, overshadowing the reality of medieval justice and punishment. While the Middle Ages did have their share of brutal practices, the Iron Maiden was not one of them. By debunking this myth, we can better understand how historical narratives are shaped by later interpretations and how easily fiction can be mistaken for fact. As we move forward, we'll uncover another misconception that challenges our assumptions about history. Now turning to another widely believed myth, let's tackle the misconception that George Washington had wooden teeth. This image of the first U.S. president with a set of clunky wooden dentures has been ingrained in popular culture for generations. However, the truth is far more fascinating and slightly unsettling. Washington's dentures were not made of wood but rather a combination of materials, including ivory, gold, and even human teeth. Yes, human teeth. Historians believe that some of the teeth in his dentures were sourced from enslaved individuals, a grim reminder of the era's social and ethical complexities. So, where did the wooden teeth myth come from? It likely stems from the appearance of his dentures, which were stained and discolored over time, giving them a wooden-like appearance. Additionally, the myth was perpetuated by early biographers and storytellers who exaggerated details to make Washington's life seem more relatable or dramatic. Over time, this false narrative became so widespread that it overshadowed the reality of his dental struggles. Washington suffered from severe dental issues throughout his life, losing most of his teeth by the time he became president. His dentures, while not wooden, were uncomfortable and often caused him pain, a fact that humanizes the iconic figure in a way the wooden teeth myth never could. By debunking this misconception, we not only correct the historical record but also gain a deeper understanding of the man behind the legend. As we continue, we'll explore another misconception that reveals how history is often shaped by myths and misunderstandings. Now turning to another enduring myth, let's explore the misconception that the Library of Alexandria was destroyed in a single, catastrophic fire. This image of a grand library consumed by flames in one dramatic event has captured imaginations for centuries, but the truth is far more complex. The decline of the Library of Alexandria was not the result of a single disaster, but rather a series of events that unfolded over hundreds of years. While fires did play a role in its destruction, they were just one part of a gradual decline that included political upheaval, neglect, and even deliberate acts of vandalism. The library, one of the most significant centers of knowledge in the ancient world, housed countless scrolls and texts from across the globe, making it a symbol of intellectual achievement. Its loss has been romanticized as a tragic turning point in history, often blamed on figures like Julius Caesar, whose forces reportedly set fire to parts of the city during a conflict in 48 BC. However, historians argue that while Caesar's actions may have damaged the library, they did not completely destroy it. Over the following centuries, the library continued to suffer from a lack of funding, shifting political priorities and invasions. By the time of the Arab conquest in the 7th century, the library had already been in decline for generations. The idea of a single, dramatic fire likely stems from the human tendency to simplify complex events into memorable stories. By understanding the gradual nature of the library's decline, we gain a more nuanced appreciation of its cultural significance and the fragility of knowledge in the face of time and conflict. As we move forward, we'll uncover another historical misconception that challenges what we think we know about the past. Now turning to the Wild West, let's tackle the enduring myth that it was a lawless and chaotic frontier, filled with outlaws and gunfights at every turn. This image, popularized by Hollywood movies and dime novels, paints a picture of a place where justice was rare and danger lurked around every corner. But the reality of the Wild West was far more structured and orderly than most people realize. While it's true that the frontier had its share of conflicts and challenges, many towns in the West had established law enforcement, courts, and community systems to maintain order. Sheriffs, marshals, and even local vigilante groups worked to uphold the law, and many communities were built on cooperation and mutual support. The exaggerated tales of lawlessness often stem from sensationalized stories written to entertain audiences back east, where the Wild West was seen as a land of adventure and danger. These stories, while thrilling, often ignored the everyday realities of life on the frontier, where people worked hard to build stable lives and communities. Historical records show that many towns had strict rules against carrying firearms in public, and disputes were often resolved through legal means rather than shootouts. The myth of the lawless West has persisted because it makes for a compelling narrative, but the truth is that the Wild West was a place of both hardship and resilience, where people worked together to create order out of chaos. As we continue, we'll explore another historical misconception that challenges the stories we've been told about the past. Now turning to ancient Egypt, let's address the widespread belief that the pyramids were built by slaves. This misconception has been perpetuated for centuries, often fueled by dramatic portrayals in movies and literature. However, archaeological evidence tells a very different story. The pyramids were likely constructed by skilled laborers who were not only well-fed but also highly respected for their work. These workers were part of a dedicated workforce, often organized into teams with specific roles, and they were compensated for their labor. Excavations near the pyramids have uncovered workers' tombs which provide fascinating insights into their lives. These tombs are located close to the pyramids themselves, a privilege that would not have been granted to slaves. Inscriptions found at the site suggest that the workers were proud of their contributions, often referring to themselves as friends of Khufu, the pharaoh for whom the Great Pyramid was built. Additionally, evidence from worker settlements indicates that they had access to quality food, medical care, and even beer, which was a staple of their diet. The idea that slaves built the pyramids likely stems from ancient Greek historian Herodotus, who wrote about Egypt centuries after the pyramids were constructed. His accounts, while influential, were not based on first-hand knowledge and have since been debunked by modern archaeology. The truth is that the construction of the pyramids was a massive communal effort, driven by skilled laborers who were deeply invested in their work. This revelation not only challenges our understanding of ancient Egypt, but also highlights the importance of questioning long-held assumptions about history. As we move forward, we'll uncover another misconception that reshapes our view of the past. Now turning to the legendary tale of the Trojan horse, let's explore whether this iconic symbol of deception was a real object or simply a metaphor for clever military strategy. The story, immortalized in Homer's epic poem The Iliad, describes how the Greeks used a giant wooden horse to infiltrate the city of Troy, ending the decade-long Trojan War. But was this horse an actual physical object, or was it a symbolic representation of cunning and ingenuity? Archaeological excavations at the ancient site of Troy, located in modern-day Turkey, have uncovered evidence of a massive conflict that aligns with the timeline of the Trojan War. However, no physical remains of a giant wooden horse have been found. This has led historians and archaeologists to debate whether the horse was a literal object or a poetic device used to describe a siege tactic, such as a battering ram or a siege tower disguised as a gift. The myth of the Trojan horse has been interpreted in various ways over the centuries. Some scholars argue that it could have been a metaphor for an earthquake or a natural disaster that weakened Troy's defenses, allowing the Greeks to breach the city. Others suggest it might represent a psychological warfare tactic, playing on the Trojans' trust and curiosity. Ancient art and literature often depict the horse as a literal object, but these depictions were created long after the events they describe, leaving room for interpretation. Modern reconstructions and artistic representations of the Trojan horse continue to fuel the debate, blending historical speculation with creative imagination. Whether real or symbolic, the story of the Trojan horse remains a powerful reminder of the role of strategy and deception in warfare. As we move forward, we'll uncover another misconception that challenges our understanding of history, proving once again that the past is often more complex than it seems. Now turning to another widely held belief, let's tackle the misconception that medieval people thought the earth was flat. This idea has been repeated so often that it's become almost a cliché, but the truth is far more fascinating. Contrary to popular belief, educated medieval Europeans knew the earth was round. Scholars like Bede, an English monk from the 8th century, and Thomas Aquinas, a prominent theologian of the 13th century, both wrote about the earth's spherical shape. In fact, Bede even calculated the Earth's circumference with remarkable accuracy for his time. So where did the myth of the flat Earth come from? It turns out, this misconception was largely popularized in the 19th century, particularly by writers like Washington Irving, who dramatized the story of Christopher Columbus. Irving's portrayal of Columbus as a lone visionary defying the flat Earth beliefs of his contemporaries was more fiction than fact. In reality, Columbus's voyage was controversial not because people thought the Earth was flat, but because they disagreed with his calculations about the size of the Earth and the feasibility of reaching Asia by sailing west. Medieval maps and texts further debunk the flat Earth myth. Many medieval maps, such as the famous Mappa Mundi, depict the Earth as a sphere, often surrounded by celestial spheres. These maps were symbolic rather than geographically accurate, but they clearly reflect an understanding of the Earth's roundness. Additionally, medieval scholars frequently referenced ancient Greek and Roman texts that described the Earth as spherical, showing that this knowledge was preserved and respected throughout the Middle Ages. The persistence of the flat Earth myth is a testament to how historical narratives can be shaped and reshaped over time. It's a reminder that even the most widely accepted ideas about the past can be based on misunderstandings or deliberate exaggerations. As we continue to explore these historical misconceptions, we'll uncover more examples of how the truth is often more nuanced than the stories we've been told. Now turning to another pivotal moment in history, let's address the misconception that the Emancipation Proclamation freed all enslaved people in the United States. While this document is often celebrated as a landmark in the fight for freedom, its actual scope was more limited than many realize. Issued by President Abraham Lincoln on January 1, 1863, the proclamation declared freedom for enslaved individuals in Confederate states that were still in rebellion against the Union. However, it did not apply to border states like Maryland, Delaware, Kentucky, and Missouri, which had remained loyal to the Union, nor did it affect areas already under Union control. So why did Lincoln limit the proclamation in this way? The answer lies in the political and legal complexities of the time. Lincoln's primary goal was to weaken the Confederacy by depriving it of its labor force, which was essential to its war effort. By framing the proclamation as a military measure, he aimed to avoid alienating border states where slavery was still legal but whose loyalty was crucial to the Union's survival. Additionally, the proclamation was grounded in Lincoln's war powers as commander-in-chief, meaning it could only legally apply to states in active rebellion. The Emancipation Proclamation was a significant step toward abolition, but it was not the final word on slavery. It paved the way for the 13th Amendment, which was ratified in December 1865 and abolished slavery throughout the entire United States. The proclamation also had immediate practical effects, as it encouraged enslaved people to flee to Union lines, where they were often welcomed as contraband of war and later enlisted as soldiers in the Union Army. This shift not only bolstered Union forces but also transformed the Civil War into a direct struggle against slavery. Historical documents and timelines help illustrate the proclamation's impact. For example, letters and diaries from the time reveal how enslaved people responded to the news, often risking their lives to seek freedom. Meanwhile, Confederate leaders condemned the proclamation as an overreach of federal power, further highlighting its significance as a turning point in the war. Despite its limitations, the Emancipation Proclamation remains a powerful symbol of progress and a reminder of the complex, often incremental nature of social change. As we reflect on this moment in history, it's important to recognize both the achievements and the shortcomings of the Emancipation Proclamation. It was a crucial step toward freedom, but it also underscores the broader struggle for equality that continued long after the Civil War ended. With this in mind, let's move forward to explore another historical misconception that challenges what we think we know about the past. Now turning to another iconic moment in American history, let's tackle the misconception that the Boston Tea Party was primarily about high taxes. While taxes were certainly a factor, the protest was driven by deeper issues, particularly the principle of taxation without representation and the monopoly power of the British East India Company. The Boston Tea Party took place on December 16, 1773, when a group of colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded British ships in Boston Harbor and dumped 342 chests of tea into the water. This dramatic act of defiance was not just a reaction to the Tea Act of 1773, which imposed a tax on tea, but also a protest against the British government's decision to grant the East India Company a monopoly on tea sales in the colonies. This monopoly undercut local merchants and reinforced the colonists' belief that they were being exploited without having a voice in Parliament. The political and economic context of the time is crucial to understanding the Boston Tea Party. The colonists were already frustrated by a series of taxes and regulations, such as the Stamp Act and the Townshend Acts, which they viewed as unjust and oppressive. The Tea Act, however, was particularly galling because it not only taxed tea, but also gave the East India Company an unfair advantage, threatening the livelihoods of colonial merchants and smugglers. The colonists saw this as yet another example of Britain's disregard for their rights and interests. The protest was also a powerful statement about self-governance and resistance to tyranny. By destroying the tea, the colonists were sending a clear message to Britain that they would not accept laws imposed on them without their consent. This act of rebellion galvanized support for the revolutionary cause and set the stage for further confrontations, including the Intolerable Acts, which Britain imposed in retaliation, and ultimately the American Revolution. Visuals of the Boston Tea Party, such as historical paintings and reenactments, helped bring this event to life. Artifacts like tea chests and documents from the time provide tangible evidence of the protest and its significance. These images and objects remind us that the Boston Tea Party was not just about tea or taxes. It was a bold assertion of liberty and a turning point in the fight for American independence. As we consider this pivotal moment, it's clear that the Boston Tea Party was about much more than high taxes. It was a protest against injustice, a defense of economic freedom, and a powerful step toward the creation of a new nation. With this in mind, let's move forward to explore another historical misconception that challenges our understanding of the past. Now turning to one of the most famous artworks in history, let's explore the misconception that the Mona Lisa's enigmatic smile is unique because Leonardo da Vinci used a special painting technique. While her smile has captivated audiences for centuries, the idea that it was created through a secret or groundbreaking method is more myth than reality. The Mona Lisa, painted by Leonardo da Vinci in the early 16th century, is renowned for its subtle, almost mysterious expression. Many have speculated that da Vinci employed a technique called sfumato, which involves blending colors and tones so seamlessly that there are no visible lines or edges. While it's true that da Vinci was a master of this technique, it wasn't unique to him or the Mona Lisa. Other Renaissance artists also used sfumato to create soft transitions and lifelike effects in their paintings. What makes the Mona Lisa's smile so intriguing is not the technique itself, but the way it plays with the viewer's perception. The smile appears to change depending on where you focus your gaze. If you look directly at her mouth, the smile seems to fade, but when you look at her eyes or other parts of the painting, the smile reappears. This optical illusion is a result of how our brains process visual information, not a special trick of the brush. Leonardo's genius lies in his ability to capture this fleeting, almost elusive expression, which has led to endless interpretations and debates about what the smile truly means. The painting's fame has also contributed to its mystique. As one of the most visited and studied artworks in the world, the Mona Lisa has become a cultural icon. Her smile has been analyzed by art historians, psychologists, and even scientists, each offering their own theories. Some suggest it reflects Leonardo's fascination with human emotion, while others believe it's a reflection of the sitter's personality. The truth is, we may never know for certain, and that uncertainty is part of what makes the painting so compelling. Close-ups of the Mona Lisa reveal the delicate brushwork and subtle shading that da Vinci used to create her expression. Expert analyzers have shown that the layers of paint are incredibly thin, allowing light to pass through and create a sense of depth and realism. These details highlight Leonardo's skill as an artist, but they also remind us that the Mona Lisa's smile is as much about the viewer's imagination as it is about the painting itself. As we reflect on this iconic masterpiece, it's clear that the Mona Lisa's smile is not the result of a secret technique, but a combination of Leonardo's artistic mastery and the power of human perception. With this in mind, let's move forward to uncover another historical misconception that challenges what we think we know about the past. Now turning to another widely held belief, let's examine the misconception that the Spanish Inquisition was exceptionally brutal compared to other institutions of its time. While the Inquisition is often depicted as a relentless and bloodthirsty force, the reality is more nuanced and less sensational than popular portrayals suggest. The Spanish Inquisition, established in the late 15th century, was indeed a powerful institution tasked with maintaining Catholic orthodoxy in Spain. It targeted individuals accused of heresy, including Jewish and Muslim converts to Christianity, as well as those suspected of practicing their former faiths in secret. However, the idea that the Inquisition was uniquely brutal is largely a product of later propaganda and literary exaggeration. When compared to other judicial systems of the time, the Spanish Inquisition's methods were not unusually harsh. In fact, its procedures were often more regulated and systematic than those of secular courts. For example, the Inquisition provided accused individuals with legal representation and required evidence for convictions, which was not always the case in other courts. While torture was used to extract confessions, it was not as widespread or extreme as often depicted. Records show that torture was employed in only a small percentage of cases and was subject to strict guidelines to prevent excessive harm. The death toll attributed to the Spanish Inquisition is also frequently overstated. Historians estimate that between 3,000 and 5,000 people were executed over the course of its three-century existence. While this number is significant, it pales in comparison to the tens of thousands executed during the witch trials in Europe or the mass killings carried out during religious conflicts like the 30 Years' War. The Inquisition's reputation for brutality was amplified by anti-Spanish propaganda, particularly from Protestant countries, which sought to portray Catholic Spain as a tyrannical and backward nation. Literature and popular culture have further cemented the exaggerated image of the Spanish Inquisition. Works like Edgar Allan Poe's The Pit and the Pendulum and Monty Python's satirical sketches have contributed to the perception of the Inquisition as a symbol of unchecked cruelty. These portrayals, while entertaining, often overshadow the historical reality. By examining historical records and comparing the Spanish Inquisition to other institutions of its time, it becomes clear that its reputation for exceptional brutality is more myth than fact. While it was undoubtedly a tool of religious and political control, its methods and impact were not as extreme as commonly believed. With this in mind, let's move forward to explore another historical misconception that challenges our understanding of the past. Now turning to a cherished piece of American history, let's explore the misconception that the first Thanksgiving was a peaceful and harmonious feast between the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people. While this image of unity and gratitude is deeply ingrained in the national consciousness, the reality of that event in 1621 was far more complex and layered with political and cultural tensions. The first Thanksgiving, often depicted as a joyous celebration of survival and friendship, was actually a gathering with significant underlying motives. The Pilgrims who had arrived in Plymouth the previous year were struggling to adapt to their new environment. Their survival depended heavily on the assistance of the Wampanoag, particularly Squanto, who taught them essential farming and hunting techniques. The feast itself was likely a three-day event attended by around 90 Wampanoag men and 50 Pilgrims. However, this gathering was not just about sharing food, it was also a strategic moment for both groups to solidify an uneasy alliance. For the Wampanoag, led by Chief Massasoit, the feast was an opportunity to maintain a fragile peace with the newcomers. The tribe had already suffered devastating losses from diseases brought by earlier European settlers, and they saw the Pilgrims as potential allies against rival tribes. For the Pilgrims, the feast was a way to express gratitude but also to secure the Wampanoag's continued support. This mutual dependence was far from the idyllic friendship often portrayed in modern retellings. The modern narrative of Thanksgiving as a peaceful and unifying event was largely shaped in the 19th century. During this time, Americans sought to create a shared national identity, and the story of the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag became a symbol of unity and cooperation. Writers like Sarah Joseph Hale, who campaigned for Thanksgiving to become a national holiday, played a key role in popularizing this simplified version of history. By the time President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday in 1863, the event had been transformed into a myth that emphasized harmony and gratitude, overshadowing the complexities of the original encounter. Native American perspectives on the first Thanksgiving and its legacy offer a stark contrast to the traditional narrative. For many indigenous communities, Thanksgiving is a reminder of the colonization and displacement that followed European settlement. The peace established in 1621 was short-lived, as tensions over land and resources eventually led to conflict, including King Philip's War in 1675. This broader context is often omitted from the Thanksgiving story, leaving out the struggles and resilience of native peoples. By revisiting the first Thanksgiving with a critical eye, we can appreciate the event's historical significance while acknowledging its complexities. The feast was not just a simple celebration, but a moment of negotiation and survival for both the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag. Understanding this fuller picture allows us to reflect on how history is shaped and reshaped over time, often to serve the needs of the present. With this in mind, let's move forward to uncover another historical misconception that challenges our understanding of the past. Now turning to another fascinating historical misconception, let's dive deeper into the myth of Napoleon's height and how it has shaped popular culture. Despite the fact that Napoleon Bonaparte stood at 5 feet 7 inches an average height for his time, the idea that he was unusually short has become one of the most enduring stereotypes in history. This misconception has not only influenced how we view Napoleon, but has also left a lasting mark on literature, film, and even psychology. The myth of Napoleon's shortness likely stems from a mix of British propaganda and a misunderstanding of measurement systems. During his lifetime, British caricaturists often depicted Napoleon as a tiny, petulant figure to undermine his authority and make him appear less threatening. Additionally, confusion between French and British measurement units led to the belief that he was much shorter than he actually was. Over time, this image of a diminutive Napoleon became ingrained in the public imagination, overshadowing the reality of his stature. In literature and film, Napoleon's perceived shortness has been used to emphasize his ambition and drive. Writers and filmmakers often portray him as a man compensating for his lack of height with grand ambitions and a larger-than-life personality. This trope has become a shorthand for exploring themes of power, insecurity, and determination. For example, in many historical dramas, Napoleon's height is exaggerated to highlight his rise from humble beginnings to becoming one of history's most influential leaders. The myth of Napoleon's height has also had a significant impact on psychology, giving rise to the concept of the Napoleon complex. This term, often used colloquially, refers to a perceived tendency among shorter individuals to overcompensate for their height through aggressive or domineering behavior. While the Napoleon complex is not a scientifically validated concept, it has become a widely recognized cultural phenomenon, further cementing the association between Napoleon and shortness in the public mind. Even in modern media, the myth persists. From cartoons to advertisements, Napoleon is frequently depicted as a small, fiery figure, reinforcing the stereotype. This portrayal often overshadows his actual achievements and contributions, reducing him to a caricature rather than a complex historical figure. The persistence of this myth highlights how historical misconceptions can shape cultural narratives and influence how we interpret the past. By examining the cultural impact of Napoleon's perceived shortness, we gain insight into how myths are created, perpetuated, and embedded in our collective consciousness. This exploration not only challenges us to question what we think we know about history, but also reminds us of the power of storytelling in shaping our understanding of the world. With this in mind, let's move forward to uncover another historical misconception that continues to shape our perception of the past. Now turning to another enduring historical myth, let's explore how the image of Vikings wearing horned helmets has been perpetuated in modern media. Despite the fact that there is no archaeological evidence to support the idea that Vikings ever wore horned helmets in battle, this iconic image has become a staple in movies, television shows, and even sports mascots. The myth of the horned Viking helmet is a fascinating example of how historical misconceptions can take on a life of their own, shaping popular culture in ways that often overshadow the truth. The origins of this myth can be traced back to the 19th century, when artists and writers began romanticizing the Viking Age. Paintings and operas such as Richard Wagner's Der Ring des Nibelungen depicted Vikings wearing elaborate horned helmets, creating a dramatic and visually striking image that captured the public's imagination. Over time, this artistic interpretation became conflated with historical reality, and the horned helmet became synonymous with Viking identity. In modern media, the horned helmet has become a shorthand for Vikings, appearing in countless films, TV series, and video games. From blockbuster movies to animated children's shows, the image of a fierce warrior with horns protruding from their helmet is instantly recognizable. However, this portrayal is far from accurate. In reality, Viking helmets were simple, functional pieces of armor designed for protection, not ornamentation. The addition of horns would have been impractical in battle, as they could easily catch on weapons or hinder movement. The influence of the horned helmet myth extends beyond entertainment. It has also shaped the way Vikings are represented in sports and branding. Many sports teams, particularly in the United States, have adopted Viking mascots adorned with horned helmets, reinforcing the stereotype. While these mascots are meant to evoke strength and ferocity, they perpetuate a distorted view of Viking culture that overshadows the rich and complex history of these seafaring people. The persistence of the horned helmet myth has had a significant impact on how we perceive Vikings. It reduces their identity to a single, exaggerated image, ignoring their achievements as explorers, traders, and craftsmen. The Vikings were a highly skilled and adaptable society, with a legacy that extends far beyond the battlefield. Yet, the horned helmet has become so ingrained in popular culture that it often overshadows these aspects of their history. By examining the role of the horned helmet in modern media, we can better understand how historical myths are created and perpetuated. This exploration challenges us to look beyond the stereotypes and appreciate the complexity of Viking culture. As we continue to uncover more historical misconceptions, we are reminded of the importance of questioning the stories we are told and seeking out the truth behind the myths. With this in mind, let's move forward to explore another misconception that has shaped our understanding of the past. Now turning to another fascinating historical figure, let's dive deeper into the legacy of Marie Antoinette and how her reputation was shaped by propaganda and her role as a scapegoat during the French Revolution. Often remembered for the infamous phrase, "Let them eat cake," which she likely never said, Marie Antoinette's story is a powerful example of how historical figures can be misrepresented and vilified to serve political agendas. During the French Revolution, Marie Antoinette became a symbol of the monarchy's excess and indifference to the suffering of the people. Revolutionary leaders used her as a scapegoat, blaming her for France's financial troubles and portraying her as a frivolous and out-of-touch queen. Pamphlets and caricatures circulated widely, depicting her as a spendthrift who cared more about fashion and luxury than the plight of her subjects. This propaganda campaign was so effective that it cemented her reputation as a villain in the public imagination, a narrative that persists to this day. However, modern historians have begun to reassess Marie Antoinette's legacy, revealing a more nuanced and complex figure. While she was indeed a product of her privileged upbringing, she was also a woman caught in the crossfire of political turmoil. Her attempts to navigate the challenges of her position, including her efforts to reform the French court and support charitable causes, have been overshadowed by the myths surrounding her. Recent scholarship has highlighted her intelligence, resilience, and the personal tragedies she endured, including the loss of her children and her eventual execution. In modern media, Marie Antoinette continues to be a subject of fascination, often portrayed in ways that reflect contemporary attitudes toward power, gender, and privilege. Films like Sofia Coppola's Marie Antoinette have sought to humanize her, depicting her as a young woman thrust into a world of immense pressure and scrutiny. These portrayals challenge the one-dimensional caricature of the let-them-eat-cake queen, offering a more empathetic view of her life and struggles. The reassessment of Marie Antoinette's legacy reminds us of the importance of questioning historical narratives and recognizing the role of propaganda in shaping our understanding of the past. By examining her story through a more critical lens, we can better appreciate the complexities of her life and the broader historical context in which she lived. As we continue to explore historical misconceptions, we are reminded that the truth is often more layered and intriguing than the myths we've been told. With this in mind, let's move forward to uncover another misconception that has shaped our understanding of history. Now turning to another widely debated historical figure, let's explore how Christopher Columbus's legacy is taught in schools, particularly in the United States, and the ongoing controversies surrounding his story. For generations, Columbus has been celebrated as the intrepid explorer who discovered America, a narrative deeply ingrained in educational curricula. However, this portrayal often overlooks the darker aspects of his voyages and their consequences. In many U.S. schools, Columbus is introduced as a heroic figure who defied the odds to prove the Earth was round and opened the door to the New World. This simplified version of history, however, ignores the fact that educated Europeans of his time already knew the Earth was round. Columbus's true goal was not to prove this scientific fact, but to find a new trade route to Asia. His accidental landing in the Americas in 1492 marked the beginning of European colonization, which had devastating effects on indigenous populations. The celebration of Columbus Day, a federal holiday in the United States, has become a focal point for debates about how history should be remembered. Critics argue that honoring Columbus perpetuates a one-sided narrative that glorifies colonization while ignoring the violence, exploitation, and disease that followed his arrival. In recent years, many states and cities have replaced Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day, shifting the focus to the resilience and contributions of Native American communities. Educational approaches are also evolving. Modern textbooks and lesson plans increasingly highlight the perspectives of indigenous peoples, acknowledging the profound impact of European colonization on their societies. This shift reflects a broader effort to present a more balanced and accurate account of history, one that challenges the myths surrounding Columbus and encourages students to think critically about the past. The ongoing debates over Columbus's legacy remind us that history is not static but constantly reinterpreted. As we reassess the stories we tell about figures like Columbus, we gain a deeper understanding of the complexities of the past and its enduring impact on the present. With this in mind, let's continue our journey through history, uncovering more misconceptions that have shaped our collective memory. Now turning to one of the most iconic structures in human history, let's explore the Great Wall of China and its profound cultural significance. For centuries, the Great Wall has stood as a symbol of China's strength, ingenuity, and enduring legacy. Stretching over 13,000 miles, it is not just a physical barrier but a testament to the resilience and ambition of the Chinese people. Yet, alongside its historical importance, the Great Wall has also been the subject of a persistent myth, the idea that it is visible from space. This myth, often repeated in classrooms and popular media, has captured the imagination of millions. The notion that such a colossal structure could be seen from orbit seems to underscore its grandeur. However, this claim has been thoroughly debunked by astronauts and scientists. From space, the Great Wall blends into the natural landscape, making it nearly impossible to distinguish with the naked eye. The myth likely originated from early spaceflight speculation and was perpetuated by its poetic appeal, but it has no basis in reality. Despite this, the myth has become deeply intertwined with the Great Wall's cultural identity. In China, the wall is more than just a historical monument. It is a source of national pride and a unifying symbol. It represents the country's rich history, its ability to overcome challenges, and its place as one of the world's oldest civilizations. The idea that it could be seen from space, even if untrue, has only added to its mystique, reinforcing its status as a global icon. The Great Wall also plays a significant role in modern tourism, drawing millions of visitors each year. For many, walking along its ancient stones is a way to connect with history and experience the scale of human achievement. The myth of its visibility from space, while scientifically inaccurate, has undoubtedly contributed to its allure, sparking curiosity and inspiring countless travelers to witness its majesty firsthand. As we reflect on the Great Wall's place in Chinese culture, we see how myths and truths can coexist, shaping our understanding of history in unexpected ways. The wall's enduring legacy reminds us that while facts matter, the stories we tell about the past can be just as powerful in defining our shared heritage. With this in mind, let's continue our exploration of historical misconceptions, uncovering more stories that challenge what we think we know. Now turning to the conclusion of our journey through these 20 historical misconceptions, it's clear that myths have a powerful way of shaping our understanding of the past. From Napoleon's height to the Great Wall's visibility from space, these stories often overshadow the truths they obscure. Yet, as we've seen, digging deeper reveals a richer, more complex history, one that challenges the oversimplified narratives we've come to accept. These misconceptions remind us that history is not just a collection of facts but a living, evolving story shaped by culture, politics, and human imagination. They also highlight the importance of questioning what we've been taught. After all, history is not just about memorizing dates and events. It's about understanding the context, the people, and the forces that shaped them. By approaching history with a critical eye, we can uncover the truths hidden beneath the myths and gain a deeper appreciation for the past. So, what's your favorite historical myth? Is there a story you've always believed that turned out to be completely wrong? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this exploration of historical misconceptions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more fascinating deep dives into history. Together, let's keep questioning, learning, and uncovering the stories that define our world. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.